Welcome to this week's Riks Round Up. In the panel today, political commentators Scarlett Carini, host and reporter for Riks Europe, and Pieter Kleppe, editor-in-chief for Riks Europe. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks.
Very happy to be back.
And today we'll be talking about Elon Musk versus Keir Starmer, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and the controversy surrounding the Olympics. But we'll start off with Elon Musk versus Keir Starmer. Peter, what are the accusations? What's happening here?
Well, Elon Musk has been tweeting that the UK may be entering a civil war. And this is, of course, related to the protests that we saw after 3 girls were murdered by somebody who turned out to be a British person from Rundee's descent. There were lots of riots after there had been fake news that the perpetrator would have been an asylum seeker or an illegal migrant. So the accusation is, look, Elon Musk and his social media platform, they are spreading hatred, they are spreading disinformation. And yeah, this, of course, creates calls by the usual suspects to stifle free speech, as we could expect, despite the fact that, of course, there was fake news on all kinds of social media platforms, not just on Twitter X. And there was also a lot of corrections and exclusive information on these social platforms, enabling people to figure out what's actually going on.
And in regards to social media and disinformation, the UK claimed to be combating disinformation on social media. Is this really the case, Scarlett?
It's like what they always try to claim. They're claiming to combat misinformation, then they're combating hate speech. But what is misinformation? It's in the eye of the beholder. And what we're currently seeing is that the government of Keir Starmer is trying to use this as a way to control the narrative and thereby also limiting the freedom of expression. And it is really scary because it's what you normally see in authoritarian regimes. And I kind of almost admire the fact that Keir Starmer is finding the time to prosecute people posting stuff online. Shouldn't he just focus on getting to the root of the issue, which is that people for decades now have been ignored with their concerns regarding a failed migrant policy? I think he should focus on that instead of trying to limit the freedom of speech.
And moving on to Kamala Harris. Peter, who is Tim Walz?
Well, he's the governor of what they call a flyover state in America, middle America. And what Kamala is trying to do is, completing her own profile, trying to pick somebody who's slightly different than she is. She's from California. She's from an ethnic minority. And this is very important for the Democrats, your race, your gender. I personally think that's a bit unfortunate, you would like to have a president that is good. It shouldn't matter what kind of race they have. I don't think that's very American, but for the Democrats, it is very, very important. So that's why they are now completing this with Tim Walz. I think what is troubling with the choice is not so much Tim Walz himself. I mean, he's a classic left-wing Democrat, that's not a crime. But the fact that she did not pick Josh Shapiro, who's the governor of Pennsylvania, I think friend and foe admit that he would be much more helpful for Kamala to get elected because he's a very popular governor. But there's one problem with him. He's Jewish. So I think we all have to reflect very deeply whether we want a situation where in the United States somebody is not picked for a certain political position because of his religion. I think that's deeply worrying, and it tells you a lot about the state of the Democratic Party, how they are pandering to people that are obsessed with race, religion, gender. I think that's not good.
And Scarlett, why did she choose Tim Walz?
Well, and first and foremost, because as Peter said, he's completely opposite of Kamala Harris. She's like this typical California prosecutor. He is much more approachable in that sense. He comes from Midern America, and therefore he can also appeal more to the suburbs, which she will have a harder time to do so. And then, of course, he has a very good background. He was a teacher. It shows that he had a political life. He had a completely different life before entering politics. He was also in the military, so it shows that that he's a patriot, that he's trustworthy. And in his career as a governor, he really occupied with very democratic, important issues such as education, healthcare, infrastructure. So that makes him having a good profile. And overall, if we look at the comments line, the Democrats are very happy with him, and they think with Tim Walz, they have a vice president that can also reach out to more moderate Republicans.
Moving on to the Olympics, big controversy surrounding the Olympics regarding biological women competing against trans women in boxing. So I guess in some ways this debate is still quite young and we haven't reached a verdict, so to speak. It's still very controversial. Scarlett, why is the public so outraged by this?
There is so much to say. I don't even know where to start, because this is something I feel we have been saying for a longer time, which is that it's simply not fair to allow men to compete in women's sports. Because if you've been a man until your 18th, you've developed as a man. You've got much more testosterone. You've got a greater muscle mass. And therefore, you create an unfair situation that is not just unfair for women competing in sports, but it's also literally putting them in dangerous situations. There's a reason why this lady from Italy had to pull out after 40 seconds of being in the game. It's because she was heavily injured. She said, "I've never been hit like that before." Can you imagine dedicating your whole life for one match, practicing day after day, sacrificing your childhood, your social life, just for that one moment, only to be it taken away from you? I think it's logical that we're seeing an outrage, and we could have predicted that this outcome would have happened, because it's not the first time that we're seeing women being beaten up brutally. To give you an example, 2014, there was an MMA fight between Fallon Fox and Tamika Brands. We had the same issue happening, and she also pulled out due to the fact that she was beaten so severely, it ended up her having a concussion. I think we really have to start debating when is enough enough. We cannot allow women to be brutally beaten up in an unjust game only because it is a political agenda, as the Olympic Committee said.
And considering the outrage regarding this decision, will the policies have to be reconsidered, Pieter?
I think so. So the problem seems to be that this person from Algeria, the Algerian boxer, that she was indeed born as a woman. You know, in Algeria you cannot change your gender, but she has a very rare condition whereby, as a woman, she does have XY chromosomes. Normally, men have XY chromosomes, women have XX chromosomes, but she's an exception. Now, the interesting thing is that in Olympic athletics, she would not be allowed to compete. I must say, assuming it is indeed the case that she has XY chromosomes, but it's looking very likely if you read into it. Now, why is it, not allowed in athletics, and why is it allowed in boxing? As I understand it, it's because the International Olympics Committee, which is of course hopelessly politically correct, did not dare to impose that ban because they could not rely on the sports federation, the boxing federation, which was suspended because of corruption. You know, all these boxers, you have a lot of corruption in boxing, so no surprise there. The Athletics Federation has not so long ago, I think 2 years ago, taken quite a drastic step. not only for intersex athletes like these, but also for the trans athletes, athletes that used to be a man and become a woman. They have said, look, if you are born as a man, it means you can effectively, that's what it comes down to. You cannot ever compete in the female category, which I find a very sensible position to take. It's not always, maybe pleasant for the people involved, but I think if you see what damage this does to female sports, it's the right approach to take. And it follows attempts by the Athletic Federation to try to figure out under what conditions men that have transitioned to women are allowed to compete. But this has proven to be so complicated with hormone levels and whatnot that they have taken a much clearer stance now and just say, let's keep it easy. If you're born as a man, you can still, even if you transition as a woman, compete in the male category, but you cannot compete with the ladies.
And that concludes this week's Riks Roundup. Thank you, political commentators Scarlett Carini, host and reporter for Riks Europe, and Pieter Klepper, editor-in-chief for Riks Europe.
Thank you.
And thank you, as always, for watching Riks Europe.